Good afternoon. I'm delighted to be here with all of you at ITB Futures Day. As we get ready for our deep dive into the sharing economy and what it may mean for the future of leisure and business travel, I'd like to ask you to join me in a few exercises. First, close your eyes. Close your eyes and imagine your city's tourist zone. Draw a picture of it. Make it a mental map. Next, keep your eyes closed. Think about your favorite parts of your city. The coziest corners, the most interesting markets, the best cafes, the things that make you really love your city. Now compare. How many of those things are in the tourist zone? Open your eyes. This is a map of Berlin. Red indicates where tourists have taken photos. Blue indicates where locals have taken photos. Interesting, no? And this phenomenon is not confined only to Berlin. It's playing out in cities around the world. From London to San Francisco to Tokyo, New York City, Paris, and Sydney. We have to ask ourselves, why aren't tourists experiencing all of our cities? Next, think about your smartphone for a moment and all of the things that it can do. We can find pretty much everything on our smartphones today. All kinds of information, from the news to weather to online classes. We can find our family, our friends, maybe our next date. We can find all kinds of transportation options, all kinds of places to visit. We can even find all kinds of expertise, from doctors to people to help you repair furniture. For many of us, we feel naked without our smartphone. It's become our lifeline, for better or worse. In the United States, it's estimated that people touch their phones 1,200 times a week. Now, as many of us know, smartphones are becoming more ubiquitous. At current sales rates, it's estimated that 1.2 billion phones will be sold this year alone. And they're also becoming more affordable, opening up a new world of connectivity for more people. Finally, I'm going to describe 4 tourists that will be visiting your city in the next decade. I'm going to illustrate their experiences using services that exist today, although may not yet have arrived to where you are. First, meet Anna from Amsterdam. Anna's 28. She's a millennial. She's a trained graphic designer and computer engineer. For the last 5 years, she's been working in a design firm, but she's grown a bit restless in her role. She wants to see a little bit more of the world, meet some interesting people, and importantly, she wants to give back something. She wants to invest her time and talent in her travels. Now, in the past, Anna might have gone backpacking or volunteered. Those are still options, but today they're really just the tip of the iceberg. Today, Anna decides to get a 6-month work placement using Jobatical, which is a platform that matches people with specialized skills with companies worldwide. Anna works with a company in your city and helps them develop their website design and strategy. The company benefits from her talents, and Anna earns a small salary, enough to live like a local and travel a bit. So she visits nearby places using BlaBlaCar, an intercity ride-sharing platform. She joins locally hosted suppers using Eat With, a social eating community. She exercises using Go Recess, a platform that helps you locate local fitness classes. And when Anna discovers that she needs something she didn't bring along, she taps into Peerby, a neighborhood sharing exchange, and gets what she needs from her neighbors. Next, meet Joelle from Brazil. He's a company executive traveling to your city for business. He's most interested in having premium quality and experiences that most other tourists can't have. Before Joelle leaves home, he uses Flightcar. He takes his car and drops it off at the airport. Flightcar is a platform that allows other people to use his car while he's gone. When he arrives in your city, he uses Car2Go to get around. He finds accommodation on Airbnb, gets a beautiful apartment with an extra space where he can work. He picks up the keys to his flat on Key Cafe, a platform that facilitates a smooth arrival. When he needs more space to work or meet with his colleagues, he uses Liquid Space, which is a platform that matches empty office and workspace. He takes care of errands, deliveries, and even does some local research using TaskRabbit, a platform that outsources small jobs to people in the community. And of course, he wants to show his thanks to his colleagues in your city, but he doesn't want to take them to a typical restaurant. So instead, he locates an up-and-coming chef on Feastly, who hosts an exquisite supper in an undisclosed location. His colleagues comment that it's one of the best meals they've ever had, and despite the fact that they're natives to your city, they've never heard about this place. Next, meet the Liu family. The Lius are originally from China, and now they spend part of their year in Australia. They're most interested in doing things in your city that are fun for children. So, they get a house using Knock, a home-sharing platform that caters to families. It comes complete with a playground and toys. They take a series of locally hosted tours on Any Road, a platform that connects them with local and professional tour guides and also partners with tourism boards. They go hiking, explore local history, and compare your city's Chinatown. On a rainy day, they decide to have a cooking lesson. So they locate a retired pastry chef on Thumbtack who comes over to their house for the lesson. Even their dog Spark is well cared for, thanks to Borrow My Doggy, a pet sharing platform. Finally, meet Joe and Jackie from the United States. Joe is a retired teacher, an amateur photographer. Jackie is a management consultant. Their children have left the house, so they're what we call empty nesters. They love to travel, but they need to do so on a limited budget. Come on, there we go, sorry. They do their trip research on tripping.com and ultimately decide to do a home swap using Love Home Swap. So while they're enjoying their host's home in your city, their hosts are enjoying their home in the United States. Joe wants to practice his photography, so he rents a $5,000 fancy zoom lens on Borrow Lenses, a platform for sharing video and camera equipment. He gets a $5,000 lens for $100 a week. He uses Lyft and other local ride-sharing platforms to get to his photo shoot destinations. Jackie, meanwhile, wants to meet entrepreneurs. She's spent many years helping companies with their fundraising and strategy. So Jackie is invited to teach a class at General Assembly, a global education network that taps into community instruction. The students fall in love with her, she loves the class, and she's invited back to teach. Joe falls in love with your city as well, so they're planning their next trip back before they've even left. Now, reflect on what you've just heard. Tourist zones are not where the most interesting tourism is happening. Smartphones are changing everything. And there's an increasingly broad definition of what a tourist is. More people are traveling in more ways. The lines between business and leisure travel are blurring. And we're finding ever more ways to bring community into tourism. Now, you may be wondering, why are we doing all of these exercises? Because each one of them has been enabled by and is affected by the sharing economy. The sharing economy truly is affecting pretty much everything in this space, from business models to marketing, infrastructure, and policies. It's also opening up a whole new universe of experiences for travelers, service providers, and any place or city that people want to visit. And yes, it's just getting started. So let's dive in more to the sharing economy. What is it, and why does it matter? As we do this, I'd like to ask you to please keep in mind what this means for you, both professionally as well as personally. So on one hand, with your hat on as a tour operator or a DMO or a travel agent, but also think about what this means for you as a traveler, as a parent, as a resident of your community. Now, many of you I know are familiar with the sharing economy as a concept, so I'm going to keep my explanation brief. I just want to talk about the key principles that are driving this space, and there are three: resource utilization, decentralization, and relationships and trust. The first principle, resource utilization, is pretty easy to get your head around. It basically means how much do we use the things we have. I suspect, just a hunch, that many of you have a car that right now is parked in your garage, on the street, in a parking lot somewhere. Cars are a wonderful example of an underutilized resource. On average, cars sit parked, unused, 23 hours a day. 95% of the time, they're doing nothing. And it's not just cars. We start finding underutilized resources everywhere. It includes the toys that you buy for your children, and they quickly outgrow. Or things like lawnmowers and snowblowers that you might use only a couple of times a year. When you have to own all of this stuff and yet use it only a small fraction of the time, not only is that incredibly inefficient, it's also really expensive. We can do better than this. Now, think not only about things you need, like mobility, but also those things you love to do and don't get to do very often. Boats are a great example. A lot of people love the water, but don't have a boat. Globally, boats are about 10% efficient. 90% of the time, they're docked, collecting barnacles, and costing the owner money to maintain. This is not only a tremendous waste of resources, but also enjoyment left on the table. Now imagine, what if instead you could access a boat when you wanted it? And not only a boat, what if you could access all kinds of boats? Well, this is going to take a while. Oh no. From sailboats, speedboats. I'm going to run through these because this is going slowly. Even a shoe-shaped boat or a yacht. Sorry about this. There's the shoe-shaped boat. Or a yacht, depending on your needs. Think about what this changes, both for people who have boats and those who don't. It costs less and defrays the cost of ownership. It allows more people to do the things they love. It gives them more choice, more convenience, more flexibility, and it's even better for the environment. Now think about not just boats. Think about all of the things that you love to do while you're traveling and while you're at home, and how new business models like this can help you enjoy them even more. The second principle of the sharing economy is decentralization. Thanks to new technologies, we are experiencing a sea change in connectivity. I can find and connect with more people and more things in more ways than ever before. Before the sharing economy, companies typically owned centralized inventory that they either sold or rented out to other people. Today, in this new sharing economy, we now have access to an entirely new universe of decentralized assets, things owned by people like you and me. We are now able to put these assets into better use directly with one another. This means I can find accommodation without a hotel. I can find a ride without a taxi dispatcher. I can run errands without a store. This kind of transaction is called peer-to-peer, or P2P, or you may have even heard of the peer economy. The third principle in the sharing economy is the one closest to my heart: relationships. Think about the effects of overconsumption. We've built cities for cars, not people. Our homes are full of things we rarely use, and we often don't even need to know our neighbors. The effects of this are enormous. Loneliness and isolation are pervasive. These are big problems, admittedly, and the sharing economy doesn't solve them, but it does start to get at the heart, at the core of what's going wrong. Importantly, it brings us back into relationship with one another. Sharing requires some kind of human interaction. And as we come back into relationship with one another, we're able to build trust in new ways. And this trust, in turn, creates yet more, opens more doors, and creates more opportunities. It affects how we live, how we care for our families, and yes, how we travel. Gradually, we're seeing these relationships evolve into a new sort of global community that is, if you will, powered by the sharing economy. Many sharing economy companies allow people to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves and to give back in some way. This goes far beyond just exploring a new place. This means contributing to that space, to that place. It means supporting local businesses, getting to know locals more deeply, perhaps even participating in a community project. This means Anna with her Jabbatical, Joelle with his supper, or Jackie with her class. Each one of these travelers is a new kind of global citizen. Now, when we zoom out and look at the sharing economy as a whole, the easiest way to put it is there's a lot going on. Every week, there's a new chart or list or diagram of who's doing what in this space. Quite honestly, these are a few recent favorites, just to give you a snapshot. There's a lot more behind this. There are literally thousands of companies in operation worldwide, catering from every aspect of travel to every aspect of daily life. The question is no longer what can you share, but rather, what can't be shared? As we zoom in and look at what the sharing economy means specifically for travel and tourism, we also see that it literally touches almost every part of the travel experience. Not only where you decide to go and how you get there, but once you're there, where do you stay? What do you do? What do you see? What do you eat? Who do you meet? In effect, the sharing economy potentially transforms your entire view on a place and the people that live there. At the same time, the sharing economy potentially touches almost every person and organization operating in the travel and tourism space, including those listed here. We'll come back to this more in a moment. And from a numbers perspective, it's hard to deny the sharing economy's explosive growth. It's estimated that in 2013, more than $3.5 billion of venture funding were invested in sharing economy companies. In 2014, this number grew to more than $10 billion. And it's estimated that by 2025, more than $325 billion in revenue will be generated by sharing economy companies. In 6 years, Airbnb has accomplished, in terms of numbers of rooms available to be booked, what it took Hilton Hotels more than 93 years to do. And in that same time frame, Airbnb is already in more than twice the number of countries. The Airbnb community is unlocking and investing hundreds of millions of euro in local businesses around the world every year. Meanwhile, BlaBlaCar, an intercity ride-sharing platform, now has more than 10 million members and is transporting more people than Eurostar across Europe, Turkey, Russia, India, and Brazil. And they're doing so at less than 1/100th the cost of capital. Now, while larger companies like Airbnb and BlaBlaCar are growing, please keep in mind there are many, many more smaller sharing economy companies, such as Kozaza in South Korea, or Lila here in Germany, that are also transforming this space. They might not be making global headlines, but they are absolutely part of this global growth and progress. It's safe to say that in terms of scope, scale, and impact, the sharing economy has arrived. But just because it's arrived today doesn't mean it will still be here tomorrow. Are we looking at a paradigm shift, or will the sharing economy be forgotten in a few years' time? To help us figure this out, let's look at a series of megatrends, megaforces that are affecting society at large. These go far beyond travel and far beyond the sharing economy, but they give us a really useful framework to assess what's happening and what to expect ahead. First, let's go back to technology, and in particular, the power of mobile. Here is a statistic that blows my mind. It is expected that in 2020, 90% of the global population over age 6 will have a mobile phone. And there will be more than 6 billion phone subscriptions. That's more than double the number today. Now, the implications of this are many. Not only will we likely be able to organize every part of our travel on the small computer in our hands, but also our smartphones are likely to be even smarter. In the future, I fully expect that our phones will know things. They'll be able to ask us questions. They'll be able to identify things we need or want and where we might find them. Insofar as sharing economy platforms are tech-enabled, they will be able to leapfrog older service providers even more than today, even more efficiently and more economically. Next, let's look at demographics. Demographic shifts that are having a profound effect on society. Let's focus on two key groups. First, digital natives. More people are in the world every year that have no memory of the world before the internet. They are accustomed to finding things, buying things, making decisions, and living their lives online. Millennials and other digital natives will become an increasingly large part of the global travel population. They're already incorporating sharing economy principles into their lifestyles. Secondly, there are more older people in the world than ever before. The baby boomers are aging, and people everywhere are living longer, thanks to improvements in healthcare. It's estimated that in 2020, 10% of the global population will be over age 65. Many older people love to travel. Like Joe and Jackie, they have flexibility and expertise, but they may have a fixed budget. Ironically, many older travelers remember the era before mass consumption when sharing was much more common. Perhaps it's no coincidence even, Airbnb's largest demographic growth in terms of guests and hosts are older travelers, often because they learn about the platform from their children. The point here is, digital natives and older travelers get the sharing economy. It's time to start planning for their preferences and their expectations in abundance. Closely related to demographics are changes to the workforce. Who's working, how they're working, and what this means, in particular for business travel. A few more statistics for you. Today, there are more than 1.2 billion mobile workers in the world. And by mobile worker, what I mean is someone who doesn't have a fixed office or a fixed desk. Also today, 30% of the entire North American workforce is what we call freelance. By freelance, I mean people without a single organizational affiliation. By 2020, this number rises to 40%, with Europe not far behind. Also in 2020, 50% of the entire global workforce will be millennials or younger. And by 2030, this number rises to 75%. So, what can we make of this? Number one, business and leisure travel are blurring. We can be and we can work almost anywhere. Secondly, there's a huge opportunity in rethinking business travel needs, in particular, those needs for freelance business travelers. Now, as if technology, demographics, and a changing workforce weren't enough, urbanization is perhaps the biggest megatrend that I see affecting us. We are living in the urban millennium. Let's put this in context. Went too fast. There we go. Let's put this in context. In 2000, we had a global population of approximately 6 billion people, 45% of whom lived in cities. In 2007, some of you may remember, we tipped the needle. For the first time in human history, more people living in cities than not. Today, we have a global population of just over 7 billion people, 55% of whom live in cities. Every week, there is a new Munich or a new Copenhagen showing up somewhere on the planet. That's how quickly we're urbanizing. By 2030, we have a population of about 8 billion people, 60% of whom are in cities, and then things start getting really interesting. 2050, global population of 9 billion people, 75% of them in cities. 2100, a time that most of our children will remember, a global population of 10 billion people, 85% of whom live in cities. That means significantly more people living in cities than inhabit the entire planet today. Okay, what do we make of this? What should we do about this? Number one, we have to start using our resources in cities more efficiently. We need to use what we've got at full capacity. We need to start building cities for people, not cars, for relationships, not ring roads. And it means that regardless of how many people you have visiting islands or taking rural road trips, we have to start planning for the needs and demands of urban travelers. Now, thankfully, there's a bright spot in this. The sharing economy actually helps cities address these challenges and meet their goals with regards to travel and far beyond. Gradually, cities around the world are taking note of the sharing economy and what it means. From Seoul to Amsterdam to Vancouver, the sharing city concept is taking root. And I've made this slide intentionally cluttered to give you a sense of just how much is happening in this space. In a sharing city, it's easy to share assets of all kinds. And residents and the local government alike understand and embrace its benefits. For cities, on one hand, this means taking assets that the city owns and putting them into shared use. On the other hand, it means creating an enabling environment that makes it easy for others, both residents and visitors alike, to share with one another. In effect, a sharing city means less congestion and more community, less isolation and more innovation. And the final megatrend that we're going to talk about today, global development and sustainability. We are faced with an ever-increasing set of global issues to tackle, from climate change to inequality. And many people, not just students and volunteers, many people in this world, especially those with specialized expertise, want to help address these challenges. I believe that this opens up a whole new universe of travel opportunities. I believe that on one hand, we're going to see many more people traveling because of and with their specialized skills, like Anna did with her Jabatical. And at the same time, I think we're going to see a new kind of local or even hyper-local tourism evolve in our own backyards, a tourism that digs much deeper into our cities and our neighborhoods. So let's reflect on what we've just heard. Massive shifts due to technology, demographics, a changing workforce, urbanization, and global development. Against this backdrop, do we think that the sharing economy is a short-term fad, or is it a longer-term shift? Is it more like the Rubik's Cube, here today and gone tomorrow, or more like the internet, fundamentally transforming life and society as we know it? I'm not here to answer this question for you. You yourself need to answer it based on the feedback, the data that you're collecting. What I am here to help you do, however, is explain and assess what it represents and how to prepare for what's ahead. So with the rest of our time, let's explore this question. If the sharing economy is here to stay, what should we do about it? Let's focus on opportunities, solutions, fresh ideas. Let's also take inspiration from innovation in the past. Keep in mind the car, the tram, the telephone, the ATM, all of these things were considered highly disruptive innovation when they first showed up. We had no idea what to do about them, nor how to regulate them, none of that. Obviously, not only have we learned what to do about these things, but we now can't imagine life without them. So, the sharing economy, what to do? First, the sharing economy presents an unprecedented opportunity to rethink your city's tourism board. Think back to Anna, Joelle, Joe and Jackie, and the Lius, and the things they wanted to do in your city. Now imagine, what if each of them were welcomed by your tourism board? What if you could tap into their skills, their interests, their talents? What if you could connect locals, residents, to them, and vice versa? This would unlock a chain reaction of community benefit. But there's more. Think about when your city has large events and demand outstrips supply. The sharing economy allows you to expand inventory flexibly and allows you to absorb and be hospitable to more people. Or, perhaps my boldest idea for today, imagine a new kind of tourism. Let's call it sharing economy tourism, that proactively embraces this space, attracts tomorrow's travelers, boosts the local economy, and taps into community assets. I can assure you that some cities, DMOs, and others are thinking about this, and it will become a competitive advantage over time. My question for you is your city among them? Next, the sharing economy also offers an unprecedented opportunity to rethink and redesign policies and regulation in this space. Indeed, it forces us to ask the question, what and why do we really need to regulate? The rules in place for most economic activity today were based on a largely ownership society. When you apply them to a sharing transaction, they often break. Now, this does not make them bad rules, it just means they're outdated, and there is a huge opportunity in updating them. As we think about how to do this, we need to ask ourselves, what are we trying to regulate here? Is there a bona fide public risk at stake? Or is it simply something we've never seen before and we assume we have to regulate it? I do a lot of work with policymakers around the world, and they'll call me up and say, hey, can you help us think through our regulations? I have to ask them on day one, okay, you want to regulate this new activity? How many of you as policymakers, how many of you have used this platform? And I won't really work with them until they actually have used the platform, because I say, before we're going to regulate something, we have to know and understand what it is we're regulating. And this is a really helpful place to start. We should also keep in mind that when we talk about redesigning regulations, it doesn't necessarily mean, if you will, regulating up and applying more rules to more people. It also can mean deregulating down and applying fewer rules to everybody. I strongly believe that the best path forward in this space is to see the sharing economy for what it is. Not regulation-free, but requiring a new set of appropriate regulations that harness the power of community, technology, and new business models. Finally, the sharing economy offers us a great opportunity to rethink hospitality and who can provide it. As the sharing economy grows, we see the lines between traditional hospitality providers and new entrants blurring. On one hand, we see hotels incorporating more collaborative features to the guest experience. Marriott Hotels has workplace on demand. Westin Hotels have a fitness gear lending program. On the other hand, we see sharing economy platforms establish more quality controls. Airbnb has an innovation lab, a superhost program, and now they have corporate partnerships as well. One Fine Stay has a similarly situated concierge program. We have to ask ourselves, what is hospitality? It's no longer the exclusive remit of schools and certifications. We're learning, or rather relearning, that anyone can be hospitable. Our hosts, our neighbors, and yes, even strangers. The opportunity here is to stop thinking about hospitality as an industry segment and start thinking about it almost like an attitude, something that anyone can provide. Now, we're rethinking a lot here. Tourism boards, regulations, and hospitality are just the start. But I don't want you to think that we're moving to a world in which everything is shared, or that sharing completely replaces owning. Not at all. Rather, what we're doing with the sharing economy is creating and expanding markets for things that never had a market before. We are, in effect, as I like to say, baking a bigger pie. We're allowing more people to travel in more ways. We're also, the sharing economy in this light can be seen as a tool that allows people to live more meaningful lives, and it's a new lens for seeing the world. Now, in this regard, I do believe the sharing economy is more than just a temporary phenomenon. It's increasingly permanent and mainstream. But we must also keep in mind the sharing economy itself is simply one piece of a much larger travel and economic pie, in which opportunities for further innovation are abundant. Let's go back to our travelers and think about what was most important to them about visiting your city. Anna wanted to live like a local and give back. Joelle wanted premium quality and experience. The Lius wanted convenience, things that were fun for children. Joe and Jackie wanted to visit lesser-known parts of your city and connect with entrepreneurs. The point here is each of their travel priorities was more easily met by the sharing economy. And in the process, they built community. They made new friends and colleagues. They built relationships. And perhaps most importantly, they left your city a better place. From where I stand, the sharing economy represents a fundamentally important shift, not only in how we travel, but in how we see our lives, how we live our lives, and how we see the world. A shared future is more economical, more sustainable, more connected, and more resilient. It also offers us far greater choice and personalization, like the globes. Now, we haven't figured it all out yet. There are still lots of questions and unknowns, and it's still early. But the sharing economy itself unlocks a new universe of opportunities for the travel and tourism industry as a whole. My question for you is, how do you wish to share in this future? Thank you very much.